The National Blood Service is calling on South Africans to visit its centres and donate blood. This is as the demand for blood supply increases during the festive period. To tell us more about their current stock levels is Karen Vandenberg from the SANBS. Karen, thank you so much for your time this morning. Let's talk a little bit about where are we sitting when it comes to our blood stocks in the country.
So currently, over the last couple of weeks, we've been hovering at about 3 days supply, which is really not a good place for us to be going into the festive season.
In terms of just some of the most vulnerable of provinces, and perhaps you can even go to some of the most vulnerable of cities, what are we looking like, Karen?
So for us at the moment, Kwazulu-Natal is always one of our areas where we really struggle. And with the influx of tourists in that area, they are particularly at risk. The other areas include the Western Cape and Cape Town. And this really revolves around the fact that there are many more people going into those provinces during the festive period and fewer people donating blood. And so those areas really do struggle. We do have a system where we distribute the blood across the country so that, we don't have a little bit of a surplus maybe in Gauteng, while we don't have sufficient in KwaZulu-Natal. But definitely those are the areas where we are really hoping to encourage people to come and donate over the festive period.
Karen, it almost appears as though the South African National Blood Service makes an appeal to South Africans for the donation of blood, but it looks as though the same people keep donating blood. And of course, you cannot rely on the same people all the time, because then there's a whole sustainability element that is missing there. Then how do we start encouraging new donors to come forward and donate blood? Surely it means a lot of awareness is still needed to talk a little bit about the benefits and perhaps even what is involved in donating blood.
This is very true. A couple of years ago, we embarked on an initiative to really build out or broaden the blood donor base in South Africa. And we were quite successful. And we were able to add an additional about 80,000 people to our blood donor panel. However, during COVID, and I know everybody's tired of hearing COVID, but this is still the reality, we were unable to access those areas where we would normally build up our first-time donors, such as schools and universities and so forth. And we are still at this point lagging behind, trying to catch up on new donors. So we've been very grateful and very fortunate that our repeat donors are coming back as often as as they do. But we really are still working on broadening that first-time donor base.
Just around making blood donation much more convenient in terms of the places. I know that a lot of people would say that I want to donate blood, it's just that I have to make the journey to donate blood. Is there any way, particularly where the blood stocks are running low, that we can have more of the mobile services stationed across the country, maybe even in the townships, in the more vulnerable communities? Because oftentimes we don't see a lot of people, going out of those places to try to find a place to donate blood, and convenience really, and even transport may be a huge factor here.
This is very true, and we've seen this especially with our platelet donors who have to travel quite far distances that they have just been unable to afford to come and donate. So we are really trying various methods. We have a new mobile truck, a container type vehicle that we are able to park off in places. It's a completely self-sustainable unit, so we can take it by truck, park it off in a particular area, a particular neighborhood, leave it there for a day or two, collect our blood, and then move it along. These things are, however, quite expensive, as you can imagine. They have to be self-sustainable with power. They have to have their own water reservoir. But we are piloting this, and we are very hopeful that through this kind of initiatives, we will be able to make it easier for people to come and donate. During this period, we know that people like to go shopping, they like to go on holiday. So we also do make sure that we position our blood drives and our blood collection centers in the malls and even in the in some of the holiday destinations.
Karen, in most cases when it comes to blood donation, as we said, that unfortunately we see the same people coming forward and donating blood. Is there kind of like a racial breakdown of those donors in terms of, so that we can know which racial groups are more vulnerable where they don't have blood and which racial groups are not? Is it a kind of, breakdown to tell us exactly who donates blood in this country? How old are these donors? Where do they come from, so that we know where to target?
So we've been very fortunate that over the past 10 years, we've been able to address some of the historical imbalances in terms of the racial distribution of our donors. And about 40 to 45% of our blood now comes from Black donors. Around 50% comes from white donors, with our colored and Indian donors making up the remainder. So we still have a way to go to ensure that our blood donor base reflects the demographics of our country, but we've done really well. We have these areas of people donating. Obviously, most of our blood comes from the urban areas as opposed to the more rural areas. And one of the areas that we really do struggle is KwaZulu-Natal, even when it's not during the festive period. But KwaZulu-Natal has its own set of circumstances that makes it quite difficult for us to collect sufficient blood there. And overall, I think the 40 to 60-year-old is where most of our blood come from. But we have, and now I might be open to correction for a few percent, but about 20% of our blood comes from donors younger than 30 years. So we have a good age distribution. I think we're making really good progress on racial distribution. It's just that we need more first-time donors to come and donate.
Okay, I just want to labor a little bit on the point that you've made on KwaZulu-Natal, because you've indicated twice already that you are having a continuous problem with being able to collect blood from KwaZulu-Natal. What is it about the province that makes it that difficult?
It's a unique province in that it has a very large urban population that are fairly densely distributed, but not so dense that it makes sense to have regular blood drives there. They also, so you have a very large rural population. So collecting blood in rural areas is really very difficult, because there's not enough people congregated in one area for you to make it viable to go to some of these areas. Secondly, they have, with this large rural population, there are a lot of missionary type hospitals, a lot of district hospitals where blood is needed. And so they consume quite a bit of blood, but we struggle to collect enough blood because of this very rural distribution of the population in KwaZulu-Natal. Also, I have to mention, that the HIV epidemic that the country still struggles with really also influences KwaZulu-Natal. As you can imagine, one cannot donate blood from people who are living with HIV, and so that also impacts the ability to collect sufficient blood.
Very much appreciated for your time. I do hope that through this conversation, people will be propelled to donate blood more. Karen van den Berg is our medical director at the South African National Blood Service. But